Or.
Yeah.
Yeah. They work on.
For sure. Yeah. Be part of this. Excellent. We'll see.
Like some simple sense.
No, you just,
No, it's just me tonight.
yeah.
Yeah.
Cool piece of property there.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's combined sugar out.
Not having to.
Several others you can talk about. Oh, I just drove around. Oh, yeah. Second, third, my third this year. And. Just hope everybody 30 minutes. That's Monday. Are you free? Hell no, baby. I bring you last because I'm not need to build it.
Nightmare, I felt.
No, it's fine. It's hours, but it was just a school bus. Sure. It's just got two of us.
It's older brother.
9 days or so. Yeah, it was very, yeah. Yeah.
Never got into do cameras and.
I didn't, I mean, I push on your show, I do it if I have to. So guys that did my one about it, they did a really good job, I was happy with them.
We tried verifying.
I noticed I had it.
Can't do it.
It was a say.
I'm using,
But you would have,
no, never used them before.
I heard you.
Yeah.
I don't know, they got pretty big. They're like,
Oh, when you say play about money, maybe, but.
I mean, you know, you're a fake. Well, they got a lot of the high end trucks over mine, they don't have time. They don't get pretty much. And I think they're-
Okay, call Newton County Board of Zoning Appeals to order. We'll open the meeting with pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first item on the agenda, approval of September 23rd minutes. Everybody had a chance to review the minutes. Any additions or corrections?
Motion approved.
I'll second.
Been moved, seconded, to approve the minutes as written. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, minutes approved. Okay, next on the agenda. Average Joe Living Trust, special exemption for soil excavation. 8091 North State Road 55, Lake Village, Indiana. Petitioner.
We have a drawing here, I don't know where, because I'm just only brought one.
We'll pass it down. You can have a seat at the table there. Just will be comfortable. Tell us what you like to do.
So this is a property that I'm building my own personal residence on, and I'm wanting to dig a pond out in the front there, as shown in the blue outlined area. And, seeking approval to be able to haul sand off of the site.
Okay. Are you hauling the whole berm away?
No, that berm is privacy and safety berm. That'll go around the pond there.
You say this is long 55?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Right on. Any traffic concerns in that intersection for trucks pulling out?
I don't believe so. It's the clearest visual corner on that entire intersection.
I just can't picture the intersection, so I'm taking, that's why I was asking, but I asked.
Yeah, it's clear that the berm is inside of the property and easement line, and the pond it's approximately 80 feet from the property line, which is about 100 feet from the road either way.
Okay. No hills on the road?
Very, very minimal through there.
Okay.
Nine hundred is the only hill.
Okay.
That's it, then, as far as the traffic triangle, it's clear.
Okay, very good. Any drainage issues in that particular area you need to be concerned about?
There's a drainage easement, which I'm not interfering with. I'm staying outside of that, and anything that the pond I would say would help any potential, drainage issues.
I assume this is an ag district? Yes, Guess I forgot to ask, and I apologize.
It's okay.
All the notices were sent out, properly advertised.
Correct.
Sorry, got ahead of myself.
You're fine.
Your driveway comes off of 800, then, right? Residents gonna have a driveway?
The residence will be a driveway off of 800. Yes, I'd like to have the option for a driveway off of both 800 and 55, for the snow removal. There is a driveway permit for 55. And then,
55, the state is gonna have to give you a driveway.
Yeah.
Not the county.
okay, there is one that's through NDOT that, came with that lot 7.
Yeah, that developer got all the permits for the driveways, all 55 from the state.
And I would only use that driveway on 55 temporarily for the soil removal, and then I would remove it and remediate it just to eliminate additional entrances to my property.
How long a time period do you think to be hauling?
I'd love to get it done in a year, but that might be optimistic. It might take a couple. I'm not certain on how fast the material will move out.
Okay. I'll open it up to the audience for comments. Seeing none, we'll close it to the audience, back to the board.
Are you gonna have a certain time of operation for all in the same house?
I don't anticipate having open hours, because I don't think there'll be much traffic, but my loadout hours by appointment only would be limited to daytime hours.
Weekend hours?
It's possible, I mean, I'm not certain, it'll just kind of depend on demand, but,
I'm not quite familiar with the area, so I don't know how many neighbors you got around there, that's why we're asking. No? Okay,
pretty minimal.
okay, so that's not gonna be a problem with disturbing neighbors.
No, absolutely not, no, I'm not looking to disturb anybody, just
Okay.
trying to create my own little peaceful
Yep.
retreat back in there.
Yeah, because sometimes we have a bunch of neighbors around and truck traffic in and out. So,
It'd be limited to normal business hours. I mean, there may be an exception if somebody said they needed some on a weekend or something, but I
okay,
don't really get to do that.
no, I don't either. I mean, especially if you can go right out on 55, that's gonna eliminate any problems on the county road. You're right out on the state road where I think it'd be better.
Okay, yeah, I agree,
I think that'd be best, kind of right straight out on the state road,
absolutely.
especially if there's no obstructions.
It's clear line of sight both ways. There's no hills like she was saying until 900, which is almost a mile to the
Okay,
north, so there's.
okay. Got a motion, need a second?
I'll make a motion that we approve the sand removal that's presented.
We got two motions, now we need a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Speak up. Yeah, I heard it. Microphones don't work.
Okay, all those in favor of the sand mining permit, signify by saying aye. All those opposed, motion carries.
Thanks, gentlemen. Any other questions?
Get with the office about all the paperwork and stuff,
Okay,
and
Yeah, you have a copy or?
yeah, you can have that, that's fine.
what that permits run through first of January.
You have to go up for January.
When are you starting? In December?
I'm not certain, I guess wasn't sure how.
So if you want, you could say that he could start January 1st and then he wouldn't have to do the yearly review. Or if you wanna start it now, we can still send him a letter for the yearly review where you'll have to pay $250 for it to be good for all next year.
It's based on a calendar year.
Correct.
I'd be fine with that if you all were, we could just go ahead and get it going, so that way
So we can send him the letter for
I
your.
have it in place and I have no problem in doing it in January. first.
Yeah, as long as you're
Yeah,
clear on
okay.
that.
Yep, that's good.
I didn't want a surprise.
We'll send you a letter to probably tomorrow or Monday for sure.
Okay, yeah, I'll be in touch soon.
Okay,
Thank you all very much.
thank you. Next item on the agenda, Wedding Enterprise Group, special exception for public campgrounds in an ag district. This is a petition that we started in table till this meeting, so.
Good evening, gentlemen. So I sent Christine as well as Kaylee some additional overhead maps for you guys to reference. With emergency egress and egress routes as well as proposed layouts annotated. I believe the last time we were here, we did have an opportunity to see this document. In addition, I do have a survey to provide and I do have a PDF copy that was emailed to Christine as well as Kaylee. So if we want to reference any of these documents on the overhead, that would be great as well. Great.
Tab.
Okay, perfect. Okay, good. Wasn't sure if I needed to bring X amount of copies or not, but
We got some document here.
you guys want a bigger survey, I can leave this one up here as well. Operating on minimum table stakes.
Yeah,
All right, I'll read.
at this time, if we need to reference it.
Okay.
Bring it out, how's that?
That'll be good.
If I recall, when we left off last month, we was gonna come up with a set of guidelines, separate operation.
Correct, yeah, and I don't know if you guys received the 7-page response to the questionnaire as well.
Yes.
Okay,
I suppose let's go through them.
sure.
You give us your response. Let's go through them and item by item, so everybody's aware.
Sure. You guys want to start from the top of the list and
Yep.
work our way down?
Yep.
Okay, so first question is, how accessible is the property for large RVs, road width, turning radii, and clearance? If we reference the preliminary site plan, the road width proposed is 24 feet wide with plenty of gradual turning radii to accommodate up to fifth wheels or smaller. How many sites will be allocated for full hookups? All sites will be proposed as full hookups. I have the campground broken down into 2 phases. Phase 1, which you guys might be able to reference on one of your documents there, and phase 2 as well. Phase 1 will initially be smaller. On that initial phase 1, the current campsites are proposed at 30 by 40. I'm proposing making them larger and having less sites to accommodate more room in between the sites. Ultimately, the amount of sites will end up decreasing to accommodate for sanitation holding tanks, underground utilities, common areas, parking areas, etc. Trash pickup locations will be designated. They'll be fenced. We'll have contracts with Indiana Waste for weekly dumpster pickup during operating season. Phase 1 will be proposed as premium sites, which would, like I've referenced, would be larger sites to accommodate larger, perhaps fifth wheel, and larger class, well, not class A, larger class C and travel trailers. What we're proposing is nothing over 40 foot inside the campground. Partial hookups, we don't have any intention of doing any partial hookups in phase 1 or phase 2, and potentially never doing any partial hookups. What we're proposing on the campground is all full service electric, water, and sanitation. 50 amp sites with 30 amp convertible, of course, with your designated plug-in on a camper. Fresh gray and black water connections as approved by the state of Indiana and Newton County Health Department. There was a question regarding tent sites. We don't have any tent sites proposed. I think it could prove to be a safety concern with the amount of roads and campers going in and out. In order to do tent sites, I think it would be later down the road in a designated tent site area only, where there's no vehicle traffic in and out. So basically, if we were to do tent sites, and none are proposed now, it would be, okay, here's designated parking area, walk to your tent site, set up your tent site, but no vehicle traffic back there for the obvious safety concerns. Cabins, none proposed. Group camping areas, none proposed. Again, we'll get into RV sizes, supported. Travel trailers and fifth wheels not exceeding 40 foot in length is the target market. Vans in Class C supported, but likely not the target market with this campground being proposed as seasonal. Class A is likely not supported unless it meets the maximum size threshold, meaning we're not going to have Class A bus size equipment back there. Internal road design, please reference a preliminary site plan for road spec sizes, asphalt grindings for base layer, and 53 stone compacted for initial road. Potential for asphalt road surfaces as campground produces revenue. I leave that to be stated because obviously to asphalt the entire roads, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in initial investment up front. Whereas I think grindings with compacted 53s will serve for the initial phase. Circulation pattern, one-way or two-way loops. Campground roadways have been designed wide enough to accommodate two-way loops for easy flow of traffic. Will there be pull-through sites or back-in sites, and what proportion? All sites will be proposed back-in sites. If you reference the site plan, we basically have it laid out to go along the banks of the bayou, so a pull-through site doesn't really make sense. Potentially in phase two, on the, that would be the southeast corner of the property. There could be potential for pull-through sites in the middle there, but likely wouldn't make sense because we're gonna probably designate that area for future sanitation holding tanks and maybe a common area for perhaps a playground or something of that nature. Privacy, spacing, and view corridors balanced between sites. So I wasn't necessarily sure how to answer this question. I was hoping maybe the board could elaborate on that a little bit.
I think so, well, some of these questions I came up with.
Okay.
Because
Gotcha. I didn't know who was asking what, so I'm just going through them as they were presented.
I didn't know if you're gonna have a separation between campsites instead of, there are some campsites where everybody's on top of each other and then it presents a problem between campers if we got running. Count through that type of thing. I didn't know if you're putting like a fencing, like panel fencing section. Like bush or arborvitae.
I don't intend on putting any fencing in. Obviously, if it's on somebody's site and it's not a safety violation or an eyesore or a fire hazard, I don't see why anybody would be prohibited from being able to, plant some shrubbery. I don't know if fencing would make sense just for maybe for emergency egress and ingress, but perhaps some natural buffers like you mentioned. I don't have any intention of doing that, but I wouldn't be opposed to allowing people to do that if they desire to do so. Will entrances and exits, check-in stations be located relative to the main road? So I was kind of requesting clarity as to what we are referencing as main road. If we're referencing 250 West, what we have proposed is on the northeast corner of where you would see phase two on that site plan, south of the bayou there, we would do an initial phase one ingress egress point there. As phase two, if and when phase two progresses, we would do an additional ingress egress point to the southeast corner of phase two to accommodate more ingress and egress flow. Will there be a store? We don't have any intention of doing a store. Lake Village Family Dollar is right down the road, as well as Snyder Family Dollar. If business proves to be good enough, maybe we can justify doing a small general store or something of that nature. But it's not in our immediate focus to do a store. We're more focused on getting seasonal campsites in place. Playgrounds, pools, dog parks, or recreational fields planned. We definitely don't have any intention of any pools out there. There's a 20-acre private lake that if anybody wants to do any swimming, or of course they have access to the Kankakee River itself. So definitely no pools, and very unlikely for recreational fields. I don't think we have the space required to do any sort of recreational field, and it's our intention to leave as much mature vegetation and trees as possible there. Sorry, I lost my spot.
Sure.
As far as phase two, if the space accommodates for it, like I said, if you look at the site plan on phase two, if we could fit some sort of playground or something like that, or maybe a basketball court, I would be open to that idea. But I think a lot of this area is going to be held and tied up by proper sanitation with the holding tanks that are going to be required with it being on a floodplain and not being able to do any leach fields anywhere. So, when it's all said and done, a lot of these sites, there's going to be quite a few less sites platted on the final site plan. So it's really dependent on getting the proper engineering and whatnot from Soil Solutions when they draw up the final soil waste designs. Will there be picnic shelters, fire pits, or group gathering areas? On phase one, you guys can reference the northwest corner of phase one. We're proposing eliminating 3 to 4 sites there to do a common area with beachfront access to the private lake there. Likely we'll do a common area fire pit, maybe a pergola or pavilion, something of that nature. ADA accessibility. Of course, any common areas will have to be ADA compliant as per Newton County Plan Commission. Where that would likely come into play is where the shower house currently sits. Of course, anything that's publicly accessible needs to be ADA compliant. Specific sites ADA compliant, that would be dependent on the tenant. Of course, they would be bringing their own camper, so it would have to comply to their specific needs. Will there be walking trails, boardwalks, waterfront access features? There's numerous walking trails on site, some of which are long runs on the levees. We don't have any boardwalks or anything of that nature proposed. We don't have any intention of disturbing the dike or levee or the Kankakee River for that matter. The goal is to leave the property as close to its natural state as possible so guests can enjoy the Kankakee River in its natural state, and so that we're not disturbing wildlife, levee, dike, and like I said, the river itself. Will there be a boat launch? There will not be a boat launch from this property directly to the Kankakee River. Again, we have no intention to disturb the levee, flow, or cause any additional flooding concerns. LaSalle Fish and Wildlife boat launch is within less than 1 mile from the proposed campground. So if any guests want to have access or an ingress to the river, they can certainly use LaSalle's public launch. How will parking be handled for extra vehicles, visitors and staff? There will be designated parking areas, will be platted for all common areas, as you can see in phase 1, shower house, beachfront, and playground. No parking is permitted at any time on the roadway. Tenant vehicles must remain completely on their own site, and staff parking will be accommodated on a private parking area to the north of the campground near single-family home. What landscaping or natural buffers will be used to define areas? Again, I was kind of confused as to what the board was requesting here, so if we could elaborate on that, I can try and answer to the best of my ability with not having anything prepped.
So with the buffer,
This kind of ties into the previous question, right?
Probably should have been a little bit more clear what I was asking, buffer between the campground and private property that's along the campground. Is there, I know we have trees and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if we look on the GIS overlay, if we look at the southeast corner, that's all heavily wooded, mature area there. In addition to that, there is a drainage ditch. I think you can see where that red line is to the south of that mouse cursor. There's a small drainage ditch that runs to there too. So on the south-hand side, it's not going to be much of a concern. And then if we look on the direct east-hand side across from 250 West, that's all vacant, undeveloped ground over there. If we zoom out on the GIS map and we look at Somava Resorts as a whole, I would say a good 75% of Somava Resorts is undeveloped, if not more. And again, we own everything up north to the river access, all the way west to the abandoned railroad track. So the northern line boundary and the western line boundary probably isn't really a concern for buffers. And there's a natural buffer with the south-hand side. And I suppose that answer kind of ties into the next portion, but we can kind of reiterate on it. How will the campground be buffered from nearby residents to minimize noise, lighting, and privacy impacts? The proposed area of development is in a naturally buffered and secluded area in the far northwest corner of Somava Resorts. Wedding Enterprise Rooms opens a collective of nearly 97 acres, spanning north to the banks of the Kankakee River, west to abandoned railroad, east to 250 West, and south to Point Reference on the survey. Due to layout and proximity, there are no neighboring properties to the north or west. The properties due east are all undeveloped. Properties to the south are secluded from campground by large bayou drainage ditch and heavy woods and brush. During rental season, when foliage is in full bloom, the southerly lying properties will not be subject to light pollution. Please reference the survey, preliminary site plan, and Newton County GIS map. Has a traffic study been performed to assess the increased RV and vehicle flow through Somava Resorts? Traffic study has not been completed. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the population of Somava Resorts is estimated under 200 people. With our target of seasonal campsites, with campers typically left on site full hookup for most of the season, we do not anticipate a traffic flow increase significant enough to cause concern to justify a traffic study. Has signage been configured to direct traffic? Signage starting from US 41 and 1150 North to 250 West, and of course entrances of campground, will be clearly on display for campers, staff, visitors, and EMS. How will the project support affect existing recreational uses of the Kankakee corridor, hunting, fishing, wildlife viewing? So this one is a really important one to us. I mean, the whole idea of this is to get people interested in, and I'm kind of going off the cuff here, and I'll be happy to read verbatim of what I wrote previously. But there's a lot of really cool resources in northern Newton County and Newton County as a whole that I quite frankly are underutilized. Everything from LaSalle Fish and Wildlife Area, Kankakee Sands, the bison viewing, Willow Slough. I mean, there's a lot to offer that I think gets overlooked by the public just for the sake of them not knowing that it's there. If we do something here, it's our goal to partner with these other entities and state ran and locally ran public access areas to promote them and have people get interested and involved with them. And from there, I'll read exactly what I wrote. Whiting Enterprises' biggest goals for this project is to get people, especially younger folks, and I think everybody can appreciate that in an age where most younger folks are more keen to sit inside in front of a screen, interested and engaged in the numerous outdoor and wildlife opportunities that the greater Kankakee area has to offer. As lifelong residents of the area, it is our opinion that many of the state-sponsored and privately owned outdoor and nature amenities are grossly underutilized and under-advertised. It would be our intention to promote and encourage tenants to explore these various activities: LaSalle Fish and Wildlife Area, Willow Slough, the Kankakee River itself, Kankakee Sands and bison viewing, Conrad Savannah, Sandy Oak Ranch, and too many other ones to mention. Of course, the numerous walking trails and nature viewing opportunities on our property itself and catch and release fishing on private pond encourage. Public hunting will not be supported at the campground and is forbidding. Forming partnerships with local and state proposed wildlife areas in northern Newton County is a point of emphasis for this project. What is the target market? Seasonal tourists, long-term stays, families and retirees. As we mentioned in our first meeting a couple of months ago, the target market is seasonal campsites only. I've talked to numerous other campgrounds in the area, some of which are in Newton County. If you call these campsites, there are years-long waiting lists for seasonal campsites. It's our goal to do seasonal only to mitigate traffic in and out of Somava resorts, and to also mitigate and control who's being there and at what given time, and to have formal lease agreements in place. Due to fair housing laws, Whiting Enterprise Group does not cater or market to a unique set of demographics. Rather, we are targeting folks who are interested in seasonal rentals for 6-month leasing periods, or perhaps monthly to quarterly if the demand for 6-month leases is lower than anticipated. So again, we have to be careful about, who our target market is. We're not discriminating against any class or group of people. We're just looking for long-term tenants to make the property easier to manage and to reduce the egress and egress traffic. What are the overall goals for capacity? Number of sites, expected guests per night. So we kind of touched on this earlier. Current preliminary site plan calls for 92 sites. That number is likely to go down quite significantly. We expect to eliminate nearly 10 of these to accommodate rooms for emergency routes, sanitation takes, wells, common areas, and parking space. Also intend to make some premium larger sites in phase 1, which will ultimately reduce the overall capacity, likely between 70 to 80 full hookup sites with maximum guests per site ranging from 4 to 8 depending on site size. So obviously the smaller sites in phase 2 or some of the sites in phase 1 that are accommodating smaller campers, it would be a maximum of 4 to 6 guests, with the premium sites with a maximum of 8 guests at any given time. What are the minimum road widths required for fire trucks and emergency vehicles? Fire department access roads require 20 feet of unobstructed width, 13.5 feet of unobstructed vertical clearance, and an appropriate radius for turns in the roads and dead ends for vehicles of apparatus to turn around according to the NFPA. Everything we have proposed on our site plan, minimum road width is 24 feet wide with plenty of radii and no dead ends. Is there a secondary access road for emergency evacuation or fire department entry? There is ingress and egress available from the southwest corner of the property, accessible from road frontage on County Road 285 West. In addition, there's a northerly leading ingress and egress point from phase 1 to the privately owned single-family housing area. If you guys would like to elaborate on that a little bit, if we can even zoom in on the GIS map, from what I'm referencing. Because I remember 2 months ago, one of the biggest concerns was how do we facilitate EMS? And I think that was a valid concern. And I think the addition of adding the secondary gate, if and when we got to phase 2, is going to help accomplish that. But for additional ingress and egress, if we zoom in towards where the shower house is on phase 1, there's a large industrial grade and farm grade culvert that leads to that bridge that you can see over the bayou there. That would be easily accessible for EMS vehicles. Now, probably not rated for a fire truck, potentially could be. I think we would have to have the highway department come out and inspect that, just because I don't have the expertise to tell you whether that culvert can handle it. I mean, it's just as big as any farm culvert that I've seen, and we all know the amount of weight that farm equipment has on it. But additional ingress and egress would be on the far southwest portion of the property. If we go almost towards the entrance of Samaba Resorts, we probably have to zoom out. Kaylee, thank you for facilitating this. I know it's not easy to do in real time. But if you guys look at your site plan maps with the EMS routes, you'll see, and these are for overflow, obviously. This would be, of course, worst case scenario. There is ingress and egress off of 285 West. And there's a gate currently located there as well.
The next question was a typo. It should have read will gates or barrier fence.
Okay, and that makes it, I didn't really know how to answer it.
My
Okay.
bad, sorry.
I mean,
So basically, will there be gates installed and will there be certain access to the gates? Like what kind of access if you are putting gates in there, like?
so I mean, it's up for debate and consideration. What we initially proposed to do is for the ingress and egress off 250 West is to do automated gates there, with manual override and of course keypad override. And what we could potentially do is during daytime hours, those, as far as I'm concerned, they can stay open. They're more of a privacy concern for at night to make sure that nobody's back there that's not supposed to be back there. And of course, during off-season hours, they're just going to remain closed unless we're back there doing maintenance. Sorry, I lost my spot. What is the required distance between RV sites or structures, to prevent fire spread? Now, this was from an ordinance that I took from, I believe this was from the Indiana Department of, I should have referenced it on this annotated document, I'm sorry, but I believe it's from Indiana Forest something along that nature. But it suggests a minimum of 40 feet from center line to center line of the campsites observed, with campers no closer than 15 feet from each other to mitigate fire spread. Fire pits, grills, campfires allowed, and if so, what spacing and containment regulations apply? Obviously, with the intention of doing a campground, we're going to encourage people to do campfires, of course. Now, those campfires would be in designated fire pits at each site, provided by Wedding Enterprise Group. Fire pits and grills are only permitted on compacted stone surfaces. So obviously no fire or grilling on any foliage or anything of that nature. Non-flammable metal, coal, and ash disposal cans will be provided at each site and will not be mixed with flammable trash receptacles and disposals. Will the park provide a security office or management contact point accessible 24/7? What we intend to do is designate campsite wardens designated by Wedding Enterprise Group annually. And our first point of contact, staff point of contact information will be advertised on site and will be available 24/7. Realistically, guys, for the initial portion of this project, it's going to be a lot of boots on ground with this guy right here. My dad and uncle and my cousin, I'm not going to say they're silent partners. They're going to be heavily involved with the development of the property. But the actual maintenance and maintaining of the campground itself, you're looking at the guy. What is the emergency evacuation plan for the park? Please reference the preliminary site plan for fire evacuation plan, ingress egress points, contingency plan, ingress egress points, fire safety routes and plans will be posted in common areas as well as provided individually to tenants. Both phase 1 and 2 are entirely flanked by bayou ditches that will serve as a natural fire break to mitigate spreading. If you look at the natural layout of the bayous and where we propose the campsites, they're almost completely surrounded by either water in the existing bayous or to the western portion, or excuse me, the eastern portion of 250 West as a fire break itself. And then this specific portion goes into flooding evacuation, which I thought was a legitimate and a good point that you brought up 2 months ago. I think the best way to mitigate that is we'll monitor flood staging on government provided website, and it tracks the Kankakee River in real time. Flood staging for the Kankakee River in our area in northern Newton County begins at 10.5 feet. Action stage, which is the warning stage, begins at 9.5 feet. At 9.5 feet, tenants are sent a formal warning notice of potential flood hazards forecasted. Minor flood staging starts at 10.5 feet. Tenants are sent formal notice encouraging to vacate campground, but is still accessible and open with precautions up to tenants' own discretion. If the river crests moderate flood stage at 11.5 feet, mandatory vacating of campground is required, and campground will remain closed and not open to the public until flood staging returns to minor flood stage or below. With this plan in place, the campground will be vacated prior to a moderate or major flooding event that would require emergency evacuation, avoiding the risk altogether. During any emergency evacuation event, all RVs and campers are to remain on site to mitigate traffic flow to passenger vehicles only. Meaning if there's a major event, whether it be flood or fire, it will be negotiated inside the lease that you're not permitted to hook up your camper and try and get it out of Dodge. We'll encourage that every camper has their own tenant insurance, but the evacuation plan calls for either foot or passenger vehicles only to mitigate the traffic flow. Will emergency evacuation routes be communicated to guests? Kind of reiterate, see above. All these ingress and emergency ingress and egress, it'll all be posted on site in all common areas, as well as at the emergency evacuation gates, and will all be provided to tenants. Are these routes all-weather roads, and can they handle the weight and size of RVs? All campground roads and routes will be compliant with local standards to handle weight and size of campers and RVs. Contingency emergency routes to be rated for passenger vehicles only with no trailering. An emergency evacuation, RVs, campers, travel trailers are not to be evacuated. Individual insurance policies are encouraged to be carried by tenants. Our bridges or culverts on evacuation routes rated for RV and emergency vehicle loads. All culverts will be compliant with Newton County Highway Department. Bridges are not applicable. So there's no bridges on site. The only culvert that we reference that is currently on site is the one that we referenced going north towards a single family residence. If we need to get the highway department out there to inspect that, they're more than welcome to. I would imagine it's rated for that. Everywhere else is on landmass, so we're not going over a culvert. And where the current driveway sits, where the single family residence is at, there's actually no culvert in place. Obviously, if we were to do additional ingress and egress points for phase 1 and phase 2, we'd have to go through Newton County Highway Department and get the recommended rated culvert for there. How will traffic control be managed during a mass evacuation? As we referenced before, campground will be closed prior to moderate flood staging with mandatory tenant vacating to eliminate any of that risk or concern with mass evacuation on the front end. Just trying to take that risk totally off the board. Will a site-wide evacuation map need to be posted at each campsite and common area? I might have accidentally skipped that one on my response. So, as I stated, in all common areas, the evacuation plan will be posted, as well as at all ingress and egress areas. And each tenant, upon their lease, will be provided an evac plan. What kind of addressing and signage will be used as site identification? Site numbers visible at night. All sites will be clearly marked with lot numbers at road frontage with metal reflective signs similar to traffic style road signs and what you guys would likely see for EMS postage on a mailbox and something of that sort. Probably more elaborate of that on metal signs and on metals staking, so we don't have to worry about maybe a 4x4 post getting ran over or rotting away. Are there any light standards for roads, common areas, or entries to aid emergency response? Ingress and egress points from 250 west to campground roads, common areas, and sites will be designated with clear signage. Lighting standards seem excessive when EMS vehicles are outfitted with LED floodlights. So, I mean, my goal is not to turn this campground into a light pollution area where I have floodlights every 15 to 20 feet throughout the campground. Obviously, at the entrances, a dawn to dusk light would certainly make sense. And having enough proper signage with EMS vehicles with their outfitted LED signs, it's going to light it up fairly easily on their own, I feel like. The last thing I want to do is people be out there and they feel like they're in the middle of the city rather than a campground. Should there be controlled access gates, and how will police gain entry during emergencies? Tenants, campgrounds, wardens can operate ingress, egress with manual override from inside the gate, or if required, programmable EMS code can be provided to dispatch. So I pondered on this one, and I'm open to suggestions on how you guys would like to see this facilitated. If we do those automated gates during those designated closing hours, is there some sort of override that we can give to EMS or to dispatch? I'm certainly open to that, of how we would facilitate that. And there doesn't even necessarily have to be a gate. I think it makes sense for obvious purposes for security, but if we think it's a safety concern or violation, we don't have to do that. That would just be my preference. Are surveillance cameras or regular patrols recommended for security? 24/7 video and audio surveillance will be installed at gate ingress and egress. Surf fiber internet is already available on site with gig speed bandwidth. I already have gig speed internet ran back to the single family house. It wouldn't be a problem to have full-time 24/7 surveillance at both ingress and egress points, whether it's phase 1 or phase 2, if and when we got to that point. What economic benefits, tourism, job, tax base will the campground bring to the community? We believe the economic impact is abundantly clear and positive. The proposed development improvements are going to require investments in the sum of hundreds of thousands of dollars and will be subcontracted to local contractors and tradesmen, providing job stimulus in the area from the get-go. As lifelong residents of Lake Township, we've seen small mom and pop shops and businesses shutter only to be maybe replaced by large franchise and corporations. Our goal is, with an increased interest in the Somava Resorts area, we can provide job opportunities both at the campground and hopefully encourage other small business opportunities to arise to help support the campground. We think someone willing to reopen Luke's Restaurant or another location offering a pizza oven will reap the benefits of the campground nearby. This is just one example. The first and obvious tax benefit is that these proposed improvements, once completed, will likely result in a higher assessed property value for annual property tax assessments. Then you look at the income tax from operational revenue that will be accounted for and dispersed to state and local tax authorities. It is also worth noting that of the 136 tax sale parcels offered in the 2025 Newton County Treasurer's tax sale, 100 of these said properties were located in Somava Resorts, 93.5% of all parcels. Of these parcels, not a single one was sold to a bidder or investor and have fallen back to the Newton County. It is evident that at the time when the current ownership of Somava Resorts has given up on the community to the point of losing 100 parcels on tax sale in a calendar year, a formidable development facilitated and operated by reputable developers and businessmen should be encouraged and supported to generate some desperately needed revenue to contribute towards maintenance of dike, pumps, and the community in general. How many employees will the campground have, full-time, part-time? Guys, I toyed around with answering this question because I think we're kind of getting away with the realms of the approval of the campground itself and going more towards the day-to-day business operation of how I facilitate my business. I don't know if I'm willing to disclose that to the public right now, because with any business on the startup, it obviously depends on the demand. I'm not going to go out and hire 5 full-time employees with a campground that's half full. Just rest assured that the appropriate amount of staff will be on site to maintain and address concerns with the campground as it grows. And I did provide the 17-page tax sale page that came directly from the Newton County Treasurer. It's there for you guys to reference. At a time when people are letting properties fall and go out of Somava Resorts, you have a group of investors that are local to the community. And I'm not going to disclose to the board or to the public what we spent on the property. If they'd like to look into it, it's public record. You can see the transfer history. What I'm getting at is in a time when nobody else is willing to invest money and time into Somava Resorts, we spent a substantial amount of money acquiring the property and are interested in investing a substantial amount of more in the tunes of hundreds of thousands of dollars to improve the property further and generate income for the community. Will someone be living on the site permanently? Again, I mean, a little bit of a loaded question. The campsite wardens, if we go that route, those would be designated to people that intend on being at the campsite, of course, more often than not. No tenants will be allowed on the premise between October 2nd or March 31st unless it's to winterize their camper if they decide to leave it on site. Have you contacted the Army Corps of Engineers? I'm more than happy to get a hold of the Army Corps of Engineers. I don't know necessarily what I would be reaching out to the Army Corps of Engineers about. And I would be requesting the board or the Plan Commission for a liaison of exactly who I need to get in contact with the Army Corps of Engineers. On the survey that I provided to you guys, there is a 75-foot river easement that is state law. We don't intend on doing anything with the dike. We have no intentions on touching it for the obvious flood risk that it could propose. Nor I don't believe we're legally allowed to. Again, there's a 75-foot easement that you can reference on the survey. Have you contacted the DNR? I previously requested Newton County Plan Commission to provide a point of contact for the DNR. However, it looks like we will likely be in contact for environmental purposes, along with Newton County Health Department and Soil Solutions. The DNR is going to be directly involved when we get to the point for approval for on-site sewage in the holding tanks.
I do have a point of contact for you, and I'll give that to you.
Perfect. Good deal. Awesome. That'll help with some other projects we're working on too.
Because there's gonna be permits, you'll have to, depending on approval or non-approval.
Sure.
They'll be dealing with them with permitting and such and.
Is that someone that's local to this area as well, or is it just at the state level down in Indy?
The gentleman that I'm gonna give you a point of contact with, he is down in Indy, but he's also been up here. He's been
Okay.
right through the Somava area.
Sure.
He reports to me, I report to him.
And like the only reason I mention that is the last thing I want us to do is to get shopped off to somebody in Indianapolis that's never had boots on ground out here and doesn't know anything.
No, he's had boots on ground.
Perfect. Do you have a rule for the guest list? In addition to an annual lease, all tenants will sign a code of conduct that clearly outlines the do's and don'ts of the property. These documents to be prepared by attorneys to ensure legal compliance. Obviously, gentlemen, I'm not an attorney. I'm not going to try and do anything that's going to violate any protected class or fair housing laws or anything like that. When it comes to that code of conduct, I think it would make sense to probably have an attorney draft the leases as well as that code of conduct to make sure that we're in compliance with state law. How will you handle guests? No, we just hit that one. Hours of operation, check in, check out, open all year, part of the year. Campground is operational seasonal only from April 1st to October 1st to avoid any winterization issues. Obviously, we live in northern Indiana. The winter is a real concern when it comes to campsites or for even development of housing in general. Our goal is to have everything winterized by October 15th after tenants vacate to totally mitigate that issue altogether. Of course, that would be a valid concern for sanitation as well. Have all the water lines winterized properly, all the sewer lines winterized properly, make sure all storage tanks are completely emptied before the cold weather sets in. Campground is open and accessible to tenants 24/7 during operational season, barring any temporary closure for safety concerns, which would lead into flood staging concerns. Check-in and check-out doesn't necessarily apply, as the intention is for season-long leases to mitigate in and out traffic. Quiet hours. Quiet hours from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. Sunday through Thursday, 11 p.m. to 8 a.m. Friday through Saturday. Fires, again, we kind of hit on this earlier, but fires are only permitted at designated fire pit areas for community area, and each campsite is permitted a compliant fire pit. Fire pits will be on stone base and are not permitted to be moved to stone grass areas. All campsites are required to have a fire extinguisher on site that is up to date and annual inspected. Fireworks, none proposed or permitted except on Memorial Day or Independence Day. I can't imagine somebody would go out there and not want to light off a couple bottle rockets with their kid. Concerts, none proposed. If such an event appears to be in demand, if we decided we wanted to host an event that may perhaps is even open to the public, we would go through the proper notice and chain of command, and permitting will be applied for prior to, but this seems highly unlikely. Plans for garbage pickup, loose garbage pickup, preventing trash and debris from entering the Kankakee River. Weekly trash service contracted through Indiana Waste Service, multiple lid cover dumpster and consolidation areas proposed for both phases. Trash consolidation areas to be fenced to mitigate loose debris and wind carry. Plans for sewage, black, gray tank, what restrictions are in place on gray water and black water disposal to prevent contamination. All sewage lines, holding tanks, lift and pump stations to be designed by Soil Solutions Incorporated, an environmental consulting firm. All plans to be approved by Newton County Health Department and installed subject to necessary inspections.
You water now?
I did leave it back there and I'm ready. I read it. I'm sure there's probably, after going through that, there's a lot to take in. Is there anything that we left out that we need to discuss?
There is, Bree Stick from, Boone County Soil and Water Conservation. She is wondering if this project will disturb, 1 acre or more of land total. This includes all road construction, site development, etc. And she states, if so, it will require construction general stormwater permit, a CSGP through the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. And then also an impact survey, environmental review, conducted in conjunction with the U.S. Forest, the U.S. FWS or Indiana DNR, because they're concerned of the Indiana bat, northern long-eared bat,
Okay.
is,
Can you email all that to me,
I
please?
sure can, yeah.
Because that's, I'm not gonna remember it.
Nope, and that's fine, I will have it. So those are a couple of her concerns, and I'll make email. them.
Okay.
Special exemption, correct? It's gonna be up for annual review. And you understand the annual review?
I'm sorry, sir,
Do you understand the annual review?
could you explain it in further detail to me, please?
Every year, you'll be asked to report in.
Sure, okay,
And correct me if I'm wrong. And anytime the board feels like you're not in compliance with the annual review,
sure.
we can shut you down.
Understood. Yeah, I mean, everything that we intend to do out here, we want to do it in compliance with Newton County and the board, of course. Obviously, with the amount of money that we would have to invest to even get it to that point, we're not looking to try and waste all that money, of course. I think it's worth noting, with the way I drew on the site plans, this is a multi-phase project that is going to take years to get to the finish line. This is not going to happen overnight. We're already at the end of 2025. Before we even broke ground on this, we're looking at spring 2026 at the earliest, at best, if we can work through all these permitting, of course. Realistically, the campsite wouldn't even be open to tenants at the earliest and best case scenario the spring of 2027 for phase one. And for additional phases, that remains to be determined. So we understand that this will be an ongoing process coming back to the board and remaining compliant.
Well, one of the concerns I have is, and 10 years down the road, you said, I've had enough of this, I'm gonna sell it to somebody else.
Sure, sir. My concern right now is that
Now we have a racetrack issue. Same issue we have with the racetrack,
a racetrack issue.
that racetrack up the road,
Sure,
where new owners come in, they wanna do their own thing.
sure.
But just be forewarned, this can be, the board can.
Well, right, and I think that's probably the necessary way to police that is with whatever happens, the campground's still subject to the board, no matter who owns it.
So special exceptions do not go with the property.
Okay, so perfect. So if we were to sell the property, that means that a special exemption would not be handed on to that next buyer.
Correct.
Okay.
They would probably lead them to believe that if they were compliant and maintain the property in its current conforming use, that they would likely
They would have to go through the permitting.
they would have to reapprove it, but if everything was up to speed and compliant, it would probably expedite that process, I would imagine. I understand that concern. I would say the caveat to that, sir, and I don't mean to be facetious here, is if I can't get the approval, I would imagine my next step is probably trying to sell to somebody from outside the area. I want this to make this work. I'm a lifelong resident of Lake Township. I've lived here all my 32 years. I don't intend on going anywhere. I want to promote my business in Lake Township, and hopefully the board and the public's on board with that as well. I think it goes without stating, gentlemen, at 32 years old, I took a big swing out here. I'm trying to make it work.
One of your comments, you talked about swimming at the pond.
Sure.
What safeguards will be in place? Lifeguards, swim at your own risk?
I think I think what we would have to do, again, in the code of conduct is if you're swimming, make it required that life jackets are required at all times, and proper PPE on site.
How do you plan to enforce that?
That would probably be a better answer for an attorney. I'm not an attorney, sir, so I'll have, I mean, it's the honest answer, right? How do I enforce it? I'll have to have an attorney, and maybe that code of conduct goes to either you, I don't know if you're directly associated with the board, or to Christine, or whoever the necessary party is. I've taken this as far as I can take it on my own without having a legal background.
I guess my question is more based upon the lay understanding of it, not how you would legally enforce that, but what is your plan to
Make sure that they're
ensure
actually
that
using
the
them.
rules are being followed, ensure that people have the
Sure.
proper fire precautions, that people aren't violating
Sure.
our various burn bans that come into place, like
Right.
the day-to-day concerns. That, you know, if you're not having someone that's there staffing the area full time.
Yeah.
Of making sure that, you know, that you're not gonna have small issues that turn into major issues in a very short period of time.
Right, right. I mean, I think the overall policing of the campground would either go to that designated warden, as I stated earlier. If that doesn't suffice, and then at that point, if this gets to a point where we have to have a non-negotiable full-time employee on staff, we can visit that. You know, what I would like to point out, gentlemen, is what I'm proposing to do here is nothing that isn't currently being done in northern Newton County at other facilities, and isn't anything that hasn't been done previously. I understand times change, legality changes, zoning changes, all the necessary checks and balances need to be followed, and we want to do that. We just need the necessary guidance of what is it that we need to do to get it there.
Well, my concern is I don't wanna see it turn into a trailer park,
I have no intentions of that, sir.
you know, where you start getting rundown campers and.
Yeah. I believe the code of conduct can take care of that. I mean, we might be getting outside of the realms of what a campground is, but we see things that protect subdivisions for something like that, meaning covenants and restrictions. I don't know if that's relevant with a campground, as far as maybe, maintenance of your property, keeping it mowed up, weed eated. Obviously, in common areas, full-time staff would take care of that. Maybe there's a, restriction on the age of proposed campers that are allowed in there. Something of that nature to make sure that the property is being maintained and isn't just wasting away, if you will.
Well, I think if you don't let park models, I mean, then you're probably be all right. I mean, put park models in, then you're a little more permanent. So
Sure.
I know you're not, proposing that stuff.
I understand the concern of not wanting it to look and feel like a trailer park. I don't think we'll necessarily have that with the intention of operation being from April 1 to October 1. And oftentimes, if this place isn't in season, I'd imagine a lot of these folks are gonna wanna take their camper off-site and put in dry storage for the winter months. That's a pretty common trend with what I've seen, with a lot of facilities like this.
I believe being in a floodplain, you would have to remove the trailer after 180 days. Or a recreational vehicle,
You would have to remove it when, I'm sorry?
after 180 days.
So that would be inside the threshold of the, if we don't, if the board says, or if it's not legally compliant, if there's some ordinance in place that says we can't leave those over the winter, I mean, certainly we can comply to that. I mean, we'll just make it inside the code of conduct and inside the lease agreement. Your camper is here for occupancy April 1, October 1. And once the campground's closed from occupancy, you have until October 15th to winterize and get it out of there. Now I've seen other sites or other campgrounds in the area that I don't think are necessarily complying with that. But if there's an ordinance in place that states that, I mean, certainly we'll have to comply to it.
It's floodplain, so.
Oh, because it's a floodplain.
Yes.
Okay, I see.
Tell you that.
Gotcha. Okay.
180 days maximum for a camper.
Okay,
Or a trailer, portable trailer.
gotcha.
Like that, they're gonna have some kind of restrictions as far as time
Okay.
lapse of trailers and stuff like that.
Well, that fits our
You'll find out-
timeline anyways.
find out with the permitting process if you get.
Yeah, and that fits our timelines anyways. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, getting those campers out of there for the winter season, I would honestly prefer it as an owner anyway, to do whatever maintenance needs to be done in that time.
You, talk seasonal campers. Okay, what group of people are you targeting? Are we targeting weekenders that would come out and stay in their camper? Or are we targeting workers, construction workers and stuff that working in the area and this is their home base?
I'm not answering that question, sir. I think that violates fair housing laws. I'm just being like specific. You're at what specific people are allowed to lease there?
So what are you targeting?
I'm targeting people that are willing to lease seasonal campsites. I mean, I can't turn away somebody that wants to lease a property and is willing to able to do it and is willing to abide by the code of conduct that's laid out just because they have an Illinois address, right?
That's not what
Okay, maybe I misunderstood the question.
I didn't know if you're targeting just weekend people that want to just come out there for the weekend or a couple days through the week? Or are you targeting construction workers where you got a big construction project?
I understand.
On this.
Okay, I understand your question better now. You're more so specifically asking, is it going to be more of a campground or is it going to be somebody is living there full time?
Right.
I mean, the target market, what we're advertising is to people to use it as a campsite for weekends, holidays, retreat, stuff like that. Obviously, if somebody signs the lease, I don't think I can necessarily limit how much they can use the campsite if they have their camper in place. With the understanding that if we have any floodplain concerns and the campground's closed for those concerns, obviously they wouldn't be allowed at that point.
Thank you.
Sorry for the misunderstanding.
No problem.
On that point, I mean, is there any consideration given, because I mean, I think that legally you could limit based upon within the lease of having any consideration as far as maximum one stay go at things. So like, that person is not permitted to be on site for any 14 consecutive days
Sure.
or more than 4, something along.
Yeah.
those lines.
The only caveat I would have to that is, say we're in the heart of the summer months and somebody leases one of these campsites out and they're during the middle of their kids' summer break and they say, you know what, we've been afforded the opportunity that we can take the whole month of July off and we can stay at the campground. I think we're going into a gray area of stating how long they can stay there, stay at a property that they've leased. Now, again, I'm not an attorney, so I don't know how that legal document would work out to limit the stay, but from my standpoint, where I'm looking at it as a businessman is if you're leasing the property, as long as you're compliant and you're maintaining the property to the code of conduct, I'd be hard pressed to turn anybody away.
And I guess what I'm getting at is just that, I mean, understanding that you are free to set the terms of
Sure.
your leases. So if you want to allow April 1st to October 1st, full occupancy that entire time, under your lease, you can do that. If you want to set limitations to that, you can do that as well.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so I guess I'm getting at is, what would be your intent in proposing this? Is to set any of those limitations or to kind of leave it free use during the term of the lease?
My initial intention would be to leave it as free use. I mean, if somebody's paying for access to the site, I understand we can legally limit how much they're staying out there, but me from a person, as far as if I'm leasing a property, I want to be able to enjoy it when I want to enjoy it. That would be my mindset if I was somebody that wanted to lease one of the campsites out there. I don't think I would necessarily like if anybody told me that, hey, you can only stay here for 14 days. But I'm open to the possibility of having perhaps designated campsites for maybe longer stays and designated sites for what you referenced. And we can kind of police that as we see necessary.
So I guess my question would be, Lake Holiday, you have campers there, and granted, they're not in a floodplain, they're all year round.
Uh-huh.
They basically, I think they own their own little lot there and they pay taxes on it. But the point being is, so is your vision that these people kind of own these spots as a continual lease, or is it a 6 months?
It would be annual.
Annual.
Yeah, it would be annual. Basically, the lease is in effect from April 1 to October 1, which I think makes more sense with what you brought to my attention. I didn't know the 180-day rule. I think doing those 6 months lease makes far more sense, where we own everything and we're not giving them basically a land contract.
And they wouldn't be able to live there year round if they had to remove the camper after 180 days.
Correct. I mean, they would be limited to the April 1 to October 1 threshold.
We discussed your sanitation system, I think a couple months ago, you talked about the risers being above floodplain.
I believe Mr. Parrish noted that they no longer have to be above the floodplain. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. The state passed it that the risers no longer have to be above it. That was some of the new rule changes. It would be nice if they were, but they don't have to be.
So during a flood, what keeps floodwaters?
Nothing.
So I spoke to Brendan Housel from DNR. Things I have to look out for on my end include the elevating of mechanicals and utilities to flood protection grade is 2 feet above BFE, ensuring the structure is elevated or dry proof, flood proof. If it's not residential, and checking with the state health department on septic meeting floodplain standards, so that'd be your part of it. Like, as I said, I'll give you that point of contact, because the DNR is gonna give you a lot of information, it's probably gonna be information overload on what you can.
Sure, and I understand, I want to be in compliant with all that, because the last thing I want to do is basically degrade the surroundings and have sanitation issues, or do something that's not in compliant with you guys and have you guys, like you mentioned, you can take it away, right? What I'm looking for is some sort of traction here prior to get the engineering from Soil Solutions, to get the engineering from NIPSCO and everything like that. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars that I'm not guaranteed I can recoup. I understand going through the necessary checks and balances, but I'd like to know prior to spending that money, and is this likely to get approved or not? So long as we're compliant with all the ordinances and codes that are laid out in front of us.
Well, so evidently, when you get your engineering done, you can answer how. My concern was if there had to be a riser on the outlet, what about the inlet? What's gonna keep the floodwaters from flooding in the inlet? Is there backflow preventers in that system?
I mean, I'm sure there's a check valve of some sort.
That we're gonna have to hear from the engineering.
Well,
and get
I
that
understand.
answered.
Yeah, I
Because you don't know.
understand. Yeah, I mean, Soil Solutions will have engineering done for the entire site. And like I said, before it's all said and done, the site plan that I have to you guys is gonna look slightly different, because we're gonna be eliminating sites to accommodate for some of these things, like these storage tanks.
Thank you. So a lot of the sewer and the tanks and stuff,
Yeah,
he will actually have to be approved by the state. He'll have, so, his engineering firm will send everything down to the state will have to, approve that.
okay,
And then they will send it to me, and then I have to approve it. And then before he can get a permit from me to continue with that, he has to have a contract in place for a pump and haul before he even gets the permit.
Okay.
So, and that will mainly be, but it'll all be mainly, it'll go all downstate and then it'll come to me before.
okay, so we'll have engineers at the state.
Yeah, DNR will be involved. I know there's a lot of permitting he will have to do. I think we'll have to go out and do, what's it called? What's that called? Bria has to go out and do that, because because there's more than 1 acre being,
Yeah,
Disturbed or something.
disturbed, so
Yeah.
she'll actually have to go out and and do that. So there are some things, but as all the sewer and stuff, it'll be pipes, tanks, pumps, and that'll all be, approved by the state before it even comes back to me.
Okay.
So.
So obviously, there's still some questions to be answered, but I think they're mainly engineering, environmental, Breeze Soil and Water Division. And we're more than happy to go through all those necessary channels. Like I said, before I spend tens of thousands of dollars on this engineering, I just want to know, am I gonna get shot down before I even get started, kind of thing? Perhaps I'm not going through the correct chain here, but I think you guys can understand my concern of not wanting to spend that much money before I know if the public's gonna allow this or if the board's gonna allow this.
right, valid concern. Valid. concern.
Thank you, sir.
The roads around Samava leading up to your campground. Are they good enough roads to support the weight of these vehicles in the wet seasons?
I mean, they're county highway roads, they're in compliance with, Newton County Highway Department.
Yeah, but I've seen some county roads that get pretty soft during the.
Sure, during crosswalk, of course, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about, pickup trucks hauling travel trailers from 3,000 to 8,000 pounds, and we're not talking about running dump trucks and farm equipment back there. I personally don't see a concern with the weight of vehicles on those roads. Again, they're county roads. Any vehicle that's back there is gonna be DOT compliant, and licensed and registered with the state. So, I mean, I don't know how we could mitigate ingress and egress of DOT compliant vehicles on a county road.
Board want to open it up to the public? We,
You guys mind if I grab my water real quick?
Yeah.
Thank you.
We've already heard the public comment on this, but does the board want to entertain any short comments from the public on this, at this section of the meeting? I mean, to me, I like to be transparent as possible.
Yeah, just so it's not, you know,
Yeah,
fine,
we're
short.
I don't know if you, we've already had a, public comment on this at the prior meeting. What we're allowing is a second period. If anybody wants to speak, but it has to be kept short, like a 2-minute comment. You know, you guys came, we want to hear you. Okay? With that being said, you need to state your name and address for the records. Speak directly to the board, not the petitioner. And afterwards, we'll try to answer your common question. Good? Okay. Is there a comment?
Okay, my name is Christina Shields, resident of Sumama Resorts. I do have a few questions. One, can you hear myself? Can you hear me?
Yeah, if you speak up just a little bit more, we'll be all right.
One, is there any plans to have a bed and breakfast or a wedding venue there? I heard something about that. I don't know where, but I heard of it. And then two, is there gonna be an application process for these people that are coming to stay there? Like, are you gonna make sure they're not felons, pedophiles, just, you know, that sort of thing?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm. That's it.
Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Eric Shields, Smart resident, 2696 West 1120 North, Smart Resorts. I'm your emergency contact for emergency management for the town of Smart Resorts. In the event of a flood, fire, anything of that nature, they would contact me and try to coordinate with me to get with the residents for any kind of evacuation or anything of that sort through Smart Recruitment Club. I've never seen a possibility to get people out safely in the event of a flood or something of that nature, so. I have to object to if that is a floodplain there, I have to object to that, I don't see how you can fly there, if that levee breaks. We're screwed, we as a residents are screwed. You had, 80, 90 people additional on that road, I don't know how you're gonna people out, I really don't. The roads are in terrible shape, I get to drive through Samava and you can see they're in bad shape. The last time they did anything with our roads, they put pea gravel over it, it was a mess, it didn't do anything. My father had a fire behind his home, 2 or 3 weeks ago. It took the fire department 25 minutes to get out there. My wife and I fought the fire with 9 fire extinguishers, 25 minutes before they made it. I understand it's a volunteer fire department, I get that, but you're adding campsites with, irresponsible people having fires. I understand the premise of it, that, they're gonna have it on concrete and stuff, but the wind keep blowing out there, things get out of control. That's exactly how the fire behind his house occurred. His neighbor was burning, it got out of control. He called me and said, hey, I need you, get over here quick. So she and I fought it, but that's besides the point, but it got out of control real quick because it took the fire department forever to get there. I know for a fact that we can't build in Samava without filling in our land because it's a floodplain. So I got a neighbor that can't do anything with his house, he bought a house, can't do anything with it because of floodplain. So I don't see how you're gonna successfully put campers out there, we flood 5, 6 months out of the year. The road issue, if he could make his own road to 41, that would solve part of it, get the weight off our roads and get your own road. Piece of cake, problem solved, you know, but that's money, I can't speak for that, so. And then, he mentioned the fact that the properties in Samava, they didn't sell, that's because they're underwater 5 to 6 months out of the year. I own 2 of them properties out there myself that they do, I've got it for $100,000, what I got it for, but it's not livable, it's floodland, so. All right, that's all I got, so, beauty's with.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Thomas Crane, 162 Snob Resorts. You never bring in RVs in. On the east side, everything of 150, that's all ditches. There's no guardrail, there's no shoulder. You put 2 RVs on that narrow road, so you can't pass a garbage truck in the school bus at the same time. Back in '93, 2 of the Humvees, when we were flooding, one went down the ditch because they tried to pass each other. I've seen both those personal vehicles down the ditch. Again, there's no guardrail. An RV gets off that side of that road, it's gonna flip. Then you got a big mess, personal injuries. And that's all the way through, 250 the same way. The ditch is right there, and the county planned it out with the foot. There's no guard, no protection for anybody going off the road. No shoulder, no nothing. That's a big safety concern.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah.
I like a nice, peaceful area.
Yeah.
I don't get around real good.
Yes, sir.
I would just like to say that, the whole reason, the state, passed these regulations is because they wanted to, they wanted more campsites, more campgrounds. But that's why they took away the 2-foot riser, allowing septic tanks. So the state is promoting campgrounds.
Okay. Any other concerns? Saying none, we're gonna close it to the public, back to the board.
I'd just like to make sure that they have to be removed after 180 days.
Yeah, I mean, we can make that a non-negotiable. I have no issue with that. I mean, it sounds like I don't have a choice one way or the other. So, I didn't know that was an ordinance, but, the intention was to only keep the campground open for the 180 days during the good season anywho. But if the state of Indiana or wherever it's FEMA, wherever it's coming from, if they're stating that they have to be out of there after 180 days, it is what it is. We'll be compliant with that. Which, again, in my mind, I almost prefer it for the maintenance in the off season, if you will. And then for the sake of not having the camper sitting there all winter, potentially to one of your gentlemen's concerns of becoming decrepit.
Also help eliminate excessive flood season. Early in the spring, right, by the time they get in the summer, the flood seasons are pretty much over.
Yeah, I mean, I've tracked the Kankakee River all year, and obviously we were in a drier year. We've been in a drier year the last few years. The Kankakee River this year rarely crested 5 feet. Typically in the middle of summer, it was right around 3 feet, where it was almost alarmingly low. Again, I understand this was a drier year. To alleviate the gentleman's concerns back there, which I'm glad to know that he is a point of contact for emergency back there. Again, our goal is once this hits flood stage, for moderate flood stage, the campground's closed, non-negotiable. And that should mitigate the ingress and egress concerns and evacuation concerns. I think we squashed the bug on the front end before it's even a concern, closing the campground prior to flood stage hitting. And it's not like that river rises, 10 feet over a night. It can rise relatively quickly. But the intention is to monitor it. And before it hits moderate to major flood staging, when it hits that initial minor staging to close the campground down.
In regards to one of the audience about bread and breakfast, wedding venues, would you like to address that?
They might be confused with my last name and Wedding Enterprise Group.
Okay.
I have no intentions of a wedding venue. I mean, I could see it being a really good idea down the road.
I just want to know if you want to address her concern.
I mean, it could be a common misconception. My last name is literally Wedding, and the name of the business is Wedding Enterprise Group.
And any question application.
How do
Background check.
how do we properly vet tenants, correct, is what and I think that's a valid concern and a great question. I think perhaps maybe background checks would be required with tenants upon leasing. We could do something like that to, again, only make sure that no felons or maybe not even necessarily felons, but she mentioned child predators, I think.
Yeah.
I heard a lot, right? I think that's a valid concern. That's something that we could consider. Again, I have to be careful with, fair housing laws and make sure that we're not allowing people that should be able to apply, but it's not my intention to have criminals out there, right? I'm not running an insane asylum. And I think she had another concern too. Actually, I'd like to touch base on this, and this is kind of separate, maybe not necessarily separate. I don't intend on leasing to anybody under the age of 25 out there. And I think that's kind of common practice in a lot of the lease space, whether it's a rental car, Airbnb, stuff like that. I think we would probably run a background check and make sure that we don't have a bunch of kids out there on at mom and dad's campsite, home from college, if you will. I think that would be a valid concern. Again, we're not trying to start a giant party out there, nor run an insane asylum, so.
What, I mean, that's been a long time since, was it India? What was there before? There was
It was called Wapiti Land, sir.
yeah, and they operated
Correct.
with the floodplain and everything else, I would assume.
Correct. So if you reference, the shower house is still out there from the original campground.
Right.
If Christine was to go out there and inspect, and I'm definitely not saying that these utilities are of operational use now, but there's water lines back there, there's electric lines back there. They all need to be revamped. They're in no way, shape, or form usable in their current state.
At one time.
At one time, it was
This was an
operational.
operation.
Yes, and I have photos of when that was. Obviously, it was before my time.
Well, certainly.
Again, just want to remind the board that what I'm proposing to do is nothing that hasn't been done out there, or is nothing that the original development of Somava Resorts was intended for. I understand times change, legality changes, zoning changes, and sometimes for better, of course, too. A lot of these concerns and these ordinances are because bad things happened, right? And we learn from them and we get better. I'd also like everybody to know that myself, I'm a licensed general contractor in Newton, Porter, Lake, and Jasper counties, as well as my dad and uncles. Collectively, we've developed thousands of properties. Everything we do is up to code, up to standard. We don't intend just to hodgepodge and throw some things together. Our intention is to do things the right way. And if we weren't intending on doing things the right way, I wouldn't be sitting in front of you guys to begin with.
Well, I'll reiterate my main concern when you came for us before. You want to put a campground right next to a town. I know some other resorts at one time was just a resort area. And I think now it's turned into people's permanent residence. I have concerns with the campground right next to people's residence.
Sure,
So that's just my concern.
sure.
Flood and fire safety is my other one.
Yeah,
I mean, you got a good plan? Plans don't always work,
I understand.
so.
Yeah, just the goal is to mitigate the flood concern altogether, of course.
I guess. I go back to where it was a campground one time. And it was operational. And I don't think there was a lot of complaints about it. I mean, granted, when we next to residents, so we got a lot of things. We didn't want to go in, or next to residents. Right across the street. The cell was a campground for years, it's for state road.
Have any of you fellas have been down there? Marvin Resorts,
Yes.
Yes.
have you seen the difference between the height of the road and the land?
Yes, but I appreciate your concern, sir, but the public comment is closed. We can't have public comment at this time. This is strictly for. I appreciate your concern though. And yes, I have noticed that.
But the 97 acres doesn't flood like a lot of the rest of.
It does not, sir.
Evidently, because there was campsites there. I mean,
If you look at the elevation, and obviously, I don't know if the
I mean-
elevations are platted on the survey, but you can clearly see the elevation rise, especially where the single family house sits. As far as the northern portion of Samava, it's one of the highest points of elevation. And also, a lot of dredging has been done in that bayou. Now, this was back in the seventies, well before my time. I believe Mr. Jerome Coatney did it. He was telling me some good old stories about it, but they built a lot of this area up with the soil that they dredged from the original river. Where you see that bayou outside of that single family house, at one point that was originally part of the river before they dredged the river straight. Obviously far before my time, so I'm not an expert when it comes to that, but I do know that that particular portion of Samara Resorts where the campground is proposed, as well as where the single family residence is, it's on some of the highest elevation in that area. I was just down in the crawl space of the single family house working on some duct work. It's dry as a bone down there. Now, has there been times in the past where that may not have been the case? Potentially, possibly, probably, but as a general contractor, I also know that every crawl space has been damp at some point in its career or in its lifespans.
This may be a small, silly question. Was there terms in your lease for somebody abandons a camper there? Does it get dragged to the back or is it hauled off by Village Motors?
Well, I think we would have to probably go through proper eviction notice. I'm sure we'll have a clause in there that obviously if you abandon your camper after the lease and we try to get, hey, you got to get this thing out of here. There's obviously some action that needs to be taken, but I don't think it's as simple as me hooking up a pickup truck and dragging somebody's camper away. It's still their possession. On a leased property, we'd probably have to go through necessary eviction notice. Again, I'm not an attorney, so I'm doing the best I can here, fellas.
well, at least with 180 days, you would, you could tell them they gotta get it out of here.
Well, sure,
If they didn't, they
sure.
probably would.
I wonder if Neil's more particularly referencing, okay, what happens when that 180 days is up and they refuse to vacate the property? I'd imagine we would have to probably write some sort of grace period inside that clause before we took matters into our own hands, if you will. I'd hate to pull somebody's camper and if they had an emergency and they're a day late, right?
Got any more questions?
No.
think just one thing I want to point out before any termination of decisions made, just the caveat of the ordinance regarding special exceptions that provides for the board's authority to impose reasonable, I guess that was the term. Reasonable or appropriate conditions or safeguards with any special exception, so like such as the risers or required background checks. Items such as that be imposed as part of any sort of approval.
Okay.
Also, I did want to comment on the fair housing laws, protects against discrimination for persons of protected class such as race, disability, and that sort of thing. So status as a felon is not something that's part of the protected class that could be prohibited from consideration.
So just to clarify, if we decided to run a background check and we said, if you have a felony, we don't want to lease to you, that's okay. Not trying.
So that would be me giving you legal advice. Can't do that.
Understand,
But-
what you're saying is a felon is not a protected class.
Felons are not protected class.
Okay. That works.
Are you doing work at the property right now with the house? And you mentioned about the ductwork. And when I walked out there, I know there was a little bit of work going on.
I mean, it's getting cold and I fired up the furnace and it hasn't been fired up in a long time.
I just want to make you aware. Along with this campground is anything you do on that property, whether it's minute, some of that has to come through. My office
Sure.
as a floodplain administrator, because there's a significant improvement. Permit, and that goes for everybody in Sumama.
Sure.
And I'm trying to kind of crack down on Sumama because any kind of work, it gets flagged by the DNR. I have to explain to the DNR why I didn't get the permitting process going with everybody here. Anything, any kind of receipt, any kind of labor, whether you're doing it volunteer, whatever, it counts for that significant improvement permits.
Sure. I mean,
And it's based on the value of the house.
yeah,
Not so much your property or accessory structures, and you'll learn that too when you go in
Yeah.
apply for permits and stuff, so. I know it's a bunch of people over at the house a couple days or probably a couple weeks ago when I posted it.
yeah, I seen you out there.
Yeah, when I posted.
I was out there painting. I mean, everything I'm doing out there is really common maintenance items that you would typically see, just being, you guys know what it is to own a home, right? There's things that need to be addressed and done, and I don't think anything that we've done out there may necessarily constitute requiring pulling a permit, nor has it really increased the property value. We're just more maintaining. Now, if you say there's things that we intend to do out there and we need to pull a permit, I mean, we pull permits with you all the time. That's not a problem.
It's
Yeah,
a different beast altogether.
Sure.
Because of the area you're in.
sure, totally
And it goes- like I
understand.
said, it goes to the
Yeah, I
hobbies, too.
just want you to know that, I mean, we're not knocking down walls or pouring foundation. I mean, I'm just making sure that going into winter, everything's caulked, sealed, painted, ductwork's working properly. Like, there's gonna be more contractors in and out of there. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Mainly me being the one in the white van that you've seen out there.
I'll make the motion that we accept the special exception for the campground. The small resorts with the condition that you do your background checks. And that even if the state doesn't say, the county's gonna say that you have to have it removed after 180 days.
Okay.
Is that good? Anybody else have
Just to clarify that on, sir, the lease for occupancy can be open for 180 days, and then is there any sort of grace period of when that lease period ends to? Last thing we want to do, because again, we address a traffic concern. I don't want 80 campers trying to be vacated on the same day. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. But still, if the state says they gotta be out after
Okay,
180 days.
well, perhaps we need to narrow that leasing timeline to middle of September and then give that 15-day grace period to remove them before October 1. I mean, we could do something to kind of mitigate that concern.
Looks like if they couldn't use it though, you could give them 15 days grace to get them out, as long as they weren't camping. I mean,
I'm okay with what you proposed. I just want to make sure that I understand what you guys are proposing and make sure that we're in compliance with that.
Well, is, I guess, one, like, as far as the 180 days, obviously, I think the intent of the board to set some conditions. Now, obviously, there's always that outlier of someone that's gonna be non-compliant, and that's not necessarily what you're trying to, is the board, I know the curtail. The petitioner is more so curtail the public as far as the use of this, so if, you know, it's a holdover. Is a different story versus just what is permitted.
Right, and I think that's kind of what I was referencing. Obviously, on my end, I'm compliant. I don't want to say there is a campsite that's left out there. I don't know what Neil said, something vacated. I'm going through the necessary channels to get rid of it. I don't want my approval to get pulled because we have a couple campers that are sitting there past that 180-day timeline if I'm actively trying to get rid of it without technically stealing somebody's personal property. But
I'll second
I got a couple more conditions I like. Are we gonna, all these pages that he read through? Is that gonna be part of the conditions? All of his,
I would prepare to, I would prefer to have an attorney review them prior to making them conditions. So if we have to table the meeting again in order to do that. Yeah, I mean, I tried my damnedest here and I don't know if all of this complies with state and local ordinance.
I just didn't know if the board felt like that needed to be part of the conditions.
There's some kind of get around it.
Yeah.
Some way we need to probably fight them or even get them better down and better writing.
Well, and that's kind of what I'm referencing. I don't want this to be
Yeah.
the Bible or the Ten Commandments here. There's probably going to be things as we get the approval with state of Indiana DNR, these things might need to be, Indiana Forestry or whatever. I think they'll probably have some say and probably some good guidelines to help us out as to how to operate this more effectively, just because that's kind of in their world.
Understanding that kind of what's on the table here is getting I guess, an approval without having to pump a bunch of money in, which is totally understandable. I do think that a couple preliminary steps could be very helpful in addressing the conditions. One being checking with DNR first to make sure that this is something that is approvable, but also perhaps a like a proposed lease for I think that, because that the lease itself legally is going to be that item that allows the tenants to be controlled.
So you say we can do a conditional approval?
Pending check with DNR, maybe submission of a proposed lease.
Yeah, I have no issue doing that. I mean, we have to have a lease drafted at some point anyway, so I have no problem doing that on the front end. The only thing I would state with that is there any sort of deadline? Because obviously these things are gonna take time in order to do, especially going into the holiday season.
Well, so the lease is only gonna apply if the camper's staying there more than like a weekend.
As I understood from the petitioner, that these leases, the sites are gonna be leased out to individuals, and if whether it's they use for a weekend or they wanna use it for 6 months, the whole 6-month period.
My intention is to have 6-month lease. Now, this is all market dependent too. Maybe there isn't a demand for that 6-month lease and I have to look at maybe quarterly, maybe a 3-month lease or something like. The overall goal here is to not make it, you're signing a weekend lease or a waiver. I want longer term stability to mitigate traffic ingress. So yeah, 6 months would be what I would propose, but again, maybe the market doesn't bring that. We'll have to see what the demand is, but that's the initial, what we're looking for.
Wouldn't you think that the majority of your campers are gonna be weekenders?
I think you would be surprised, sir, with what the conversations I've had. There's years-long waiting lists for seasonal sites. Yeah. I think that is a newer kind of market in the camping world. I don't think it always used to be that way. I think there certainly would be a high demand for people that wanted to just do a weekend lease, but I have to learn this business too. I don't want to try and facilitate week in, week out, right? It'll be too much to manage on the front end. That's not my intention.
I think we need conditional because once he gets work with DNR, some of these special exceptions should be some of their guidelines.
Yes, yes,
I mean, you know, we want to coordinate, so we get the special exceptions.
The condition.
Conditions.
Condition, yes, I agree with
They
you,
all
Russ.
mashed together.
Right. And there's a few of them like the fireworks, concerts. I personally don't feel them allowed.
Okay, I mean, I have no intention of running a concert out there.
Yeah, but just want everybody to know that up front.
So I guess conditional approval subject to meeting with DNR to determine what conditions they may want to, they may have, as well as any other potential conditions.
Right.
By the board.
And the kind of things sanitary.
Me.
Yeah, the health department.
All the permitting.
Of course, and that's kind of exactly what I came in here requesting. If I have the conditional approval upon all those items, then I have no problem pursuing them, right?
But at some point, we would like to look at all them conditions.
Of course, yeah, I mean,
And maybe
we'll be
amend
completely
your-
transparent with it.
And maybe amend your special exemption. If they're, if the board's agreeable with that. Yeah. I would like to throw another condition in there.
Go ahead.
If nothing at all is done within 2 years, you know, if you just stop here tonight and not pursue this planning or anything.
Yeah.
Within 2 years, it goes away.
That's fair.
I mean, that's just gonna.
Now, the only caveat I have under that, and I understand your concern, if I'm not acting in good faith with due diligence, trying to get this to the finish line, I understand revoking it after 2 years. I do know when we talk about DNR at state level, it's gonna take some time to get
But you're still working.
But I'm all good with that.
You're still
100%.
working on it, but if you just sit back and say, heck with it, I'm tired of fighting this.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to come in 5 years, oh, we're gonna pick this up again.
Right, we would have to start the process from scratch, of course.
That has something to do with the annual review though.
Yeah,
So if he has to come, if they have to come in every year, the annual review,
yeah, well,
if we see no progress.
As long as I have notice of what timelines you guys need and what you need at those timelines, I'm happy to be completely transparent with everything that I've made progress on. And I think this might be a collective effort between myself, my dad, my uncle, Mike, and Christine. We got a little bit of work ahead of ourselves here.
So that wraps up your motion, Russ.
Is it all in there?
Yep.
So, okay, so Russ Rigby made a motion, a conditional to approving under like conditional of all the permits that are obtained from DNR, state, etc. And then does the board want to approve and the lease that Cody had said,
Background checks.
well, that will be in the lease.
I think that, no, that's in addition to the lease, so I think the
Okay.
proper wording with that Russ made a motion for conditional approval.
Additional approval.
Subject to submission to the board of, a lease. And subject to petitioner obtaining proper background checks for any proposed resident. Subject to, I guess it'd be proper approval by
any and all state agencies, local agencies, with permitting required. Subject to the 180-day condition, for, max stay. Subject to a condition of. What was the last one?
There's nothing done within.
And the subject, subject to a 2-year timeline of
Inactivity.
inactivity.
And no fireworks.
And and subject to prohibition against fireworks.
Who's gonna regulate?
Okay, so my,
Get that, Mayor?
yes. Are we sure, like, that's all we wanna put on there, right? I mean,
Moment.
because he's gonna have to come back for actual approval.
Yeah.
But he knows that you're going to potentially approve it. If he gets all these permittings from
Proof of
state.
concept.
and local.
Yeah, right. Special exception.
So we can, like, that, like, can we add to those conditions after tonight, like, if they say like,
And I guess it'd be, and from what I gathered from the, once all these things come in, we have a lease to review. That's still subject to any additional conditions that the board wishes to impose upon a final review of all the relevant data submitted by petitioner.
Correct.
okay, so subject to any additional information about the board, or,
Any additional conditions that the board wishes to impose upon final submission of all relevant information by the petitioner.
okay, I will put that all together.
Exactly what you said.
And then, Josh, you had seconded that, so.
You seconded. I still second. Yeah, okay. Whatever it was. It's been so moved, seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion passes 4 positive, 1 negative. Motion passed.
Thanks, sir.
That'd be a four.
Now, I know that was a lot. With all that being said, can you send me a list of
Yes.
exactly what you need and when you need it? Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay. What else? I'll come back to watch it.
I need a break for a little bit.
Have we got anywhere on the signage?
Yes, that's been fine. It's
Been putting
Do you guys want to hang on to that site plan or you guys have smaller copies?
I got it.
It's yours if you want it.
We got small. Okay, we're not adjourned, people. We're not adjourned. Excuse me, we're not adjourned.
Just grab my site plan,
Yeah.
if that's okay, or am I here to leave the paper?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so.
So we've been posting, signs, like we posted the Friends weddings, we posted, Joe's Wedding for us
Okay,
and everything else, so it's been posted publicly,
yeah, and, help, communication programs. All right. Any other matters? Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. And meeting's adjourned. Thank you, sir. Absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
Have your help.